one that rejected people's dogmatic approach over that of a spiritual relationship with God. So living worldly, live spiritually. Instead of being rich and hoarding your money, give some of it, help the people around you. So Gnosticism is the model of us that honors the divine awareness over social identity, which is another beautiful thing. So even our national heroes, despite what culture they belong to, they can in turn serve a symbolic purpose that in turn fuels our own growth and development. So how can a Gnostic truly belong to any nation when we belong to God or we belong to the Pleroma? It's our home. We'll return to at the end of the day. This body belongs to the earth. Our soul belongs to God.
Yeah, and I think that one of the reasons why one of the reasons I gravitated towards and felt the call towards the Gnostics message is because when I look at this is me personally, when I look at the world and I'm seeing all these religions, all these cultures, all these spiritual, everybody has their own creation myth. Everybody can't be telling the truth, and I don't believe that everybody is lying. So then what really is that primal source, that spark, that thing that gave rise to all of this? And for me personally, I found that within the Sethian Gnostic mythos and cosmology to kind of better understand what it is that what we're dealing with when we're navigating the world. And but to go back to what you were saying about what Jesus was, politicians and no spiritual leaders and stuff like that praying for, you know, Jesus said when he was on trial, my kingdom is not of this world. And one of the things that the disciples, and this is just in the canonical gospels, one of the things that the disciples kept trying to get Jesus to, they kept asking, it's like, when are you coming and destroying the Romans? When are you coming and making Israel, the top, you're supposed to be the king of Israel. You from the line of David. When are you coming and doing this? It's one of the reasons why I think that Peter had this sword, because these were rebels. I'm making no mistake about it. These weren't just these, that they say that they were fishermen. And I do believe believe they were fishermen like that. But
Sons of thunder.
they were rebels. They were ready for a fight if a fight has it, because you do when you dealing with colonization. In this case, the Romans, in their world, whatever like that, dealing with Hellenized Judaism, where other groups of Jews like, nah, we don't want no mixing with no. We want our own thing. The other group Jews like, nah, ain't nothing wrong with no Greek. We could mix a little Zeus and Hades in with our stuff, ain't no big deal. And it's like, oh no, we don't want that. No, so long story short, my kingdom is not of this world. When you say something like that, and when we as Gnostics say that our home is in the Pleroma, that we're just here right now to spread gnosis or to do a job, there's this misconception that when we're saying that, we're saying forget the earth. Fasting from the world is not fasting from the earth. And I make a distinction. I personally like to make a distinction between the earth and the world. Because just because I say that my kingdom is not of this world or this is not my home, does not mean I'm advocating for destroying the rainforest or pollution and killing animals and deleting animals and all that kind of stuff. Not that's not what that's not what that means. Or now, don't get me wrong, you did have some Gnostics that believe it. I actually, when I got this book, I was familiar with Marcion, but I never really studied Marcion. And this particular, the other Bible, the author here goes into a little bit of the history of Marcion's belief. And I was like, the more the extreme approach of no sexual thing because you don't want to reproduce. That's a thing in in certain Gnostic schools. Me personally, I don't think that that's realistic. For me personally, but so I don't make no mistake about it. There are Gnostic schools that do kind of have like that, what more of that nihilistic type of thing. But I think that that's more of a thing of the soul. I don't think it's literally we're going to say, since we're not of this world, then just whatever happens. Y'all can drop a bomb, atomic bombs everywhere. We don't care. I don't think that's really what what Gnosticism is talking about.
Welcome again, Lorenzo. Good to see you.
I
You
think
might have froze
frozen.
because while he's driving. Just
Yeah.
feel free to join in whenever you like. If you want to say a word or two, feel free whenever, Lorenzo. But yeah, you're exactly right, David. 100%. There is a separate inherent difference between the world and the earth.
Mhm.
When we speak about world, we're talking about the material world, not the actual earth itself. When even in some, depending on the Gnostic schools of thought, some even believe that the earth was inherently good, but the material world corrupted it. So that's a distinct difference. Where others believe this entire earth or cosmos was created by Yaldabaoth and the Archons, or even that it was already here because they were too dumb to do anything with it, and they just happened to put some vessels on it and put thrones on some planets. But again, that was some vast different schools of thoughts. But
Mhm.
we also have to remember that we go back to Judaism. There were Gnostic Jews as well,
Right.
and in turn had a different idea, even believing that, and some Jewish mystics as well believed that the angels created this earth, and some of those angels were fallen angels because it was corrupted, and others didn't. Others believed that in turn an adversary, either Belial or even Yahweh itself, corrupted the earth,
Mm.
and in turn, this material world is here, but it's still distinct from the earth again. So there's parts it couldn't fully corrupt. So it depends on the schools of thought, which is very fascinating. With the Markaria of the 1st century BC era, possibly the Essene ancestors, some argue to be an Essene group, but it's unknown with the origins really of the Essenes. It's very most likely that they arose out of Egyptian philosophy.
Mm.
So with that particular group, they believed that the demiurge created this earth, but under the will of the monad. So the
Right.
monad knew everything would be corrupted, but would eventually return to its original spiritual state.
Mhm.
Which is, so people seen the problems of the world and they thought, how can a perfect God create this? And this philosophy is going really far back. But again, we had the other groups that believed that this earth was originally good and it was just balance and even the light and darkness of it. But the material world, again, separate from that, was what was the due state of its fallen nature. So even the belief of souls, our souls were inherently different to that of the animals. Animals having a soul. Some groups didn't even believe animals had a soul, and they were a byproduct of the archons and the Yaldabaoth messing around before trying to create a replication of man,
Mm.
which is confused with us. So we're meant to be the first human beings. So it's interesting with the schools of thought within Gnosticism. But again, when we look at the political rulers of their time, they would persecute the Gnostics, and thus you would see them not wanting to participate of such. But some even stated with, say, Nil, he used the term with the Carpocratians being communistic because in turn they would sell all their possessions following Jesus to be a part of their community.
Mm.
So they in turn would either say, look, sell everything and come here and give it all to the church, or don't come at all. So they believe they inherit the true teachings of Jesus. And in turn, we now see that same philosophy within the Orthodox priesthood and even Catholics when we see monks going out in silent retreats, selling off what they used to have. So that philosophy itself came from the Gnostics, which in turn we see today replicated in Protestantism, even the belief of being like Jesus. This is very Gnostic, to be like Christ, but they don't understand that concept. So
Mhm.
that's a cool thing. So again, it's being in the world, but not of it. So again, you're having your own personal connection with God. You're not finding a savior figure outside of yourself.
Mhm.
Instead
And
of,
I think too that before we go, because I don't want to make it too long, but I think because
yeah,
some people may bring up that which I wrote about that about the rich man that Jesus says will sell all your stuff, give it to the poor, and come follow. He just couldn't do it. He left. And I know, and I believe that story is saying something deeper. I don't think that personally that was something that Jesus was saying that if you really want to follow me, you need to give up. I think that he was seeing something in that specific man's heart. And that's why he said that to him. But it can apply to us in the sense of giving up to me, giving up everything that we have that is worldly. I think sometimes we think that worldly just means material possessions. And it doesn't, because Nicodemus isn't chastised. Joseph of Arimathea isn't chastised for being rich, and they were wealthy men according to scripture. So clearly, it's speaking to something a little bit different, deeper, not different, but deeper, when it comes to leaving the world behind, separating yourself, giving up everything you have. Because if you have children or a family, you gonna starve, let them starve to death because you trying to follow something higher that, let's keep it real, we really don't even know it exists or not. We have faith that it exists. We have an experience, but it's still filtered through the human experience, if that makes sense. So I don't think that, when it comes to leaving the world behind, our cultures, our people, people's ways of thinking, like Zastrianos said, he read the feeble-mindedness that was around him. I don't think that it's saying that, oh, everybody's dumb and I'm only because I have this quest for knowledge, I'm the right one. Everybody else is stupid. That's not, I don't think that's what that's really saying. I think that the Gnostic message is you can be a part of your cultures. Me, Black American, of course, descending from West Africans. Like you're telling me, English, Scottish, Aboriginal blood. We can, like you said, participate in these things, but we realize that eventually you're going to hit a wall if you aren't careful. And that wall is once I die and I'm stripped of this flesh and I'm stripped of this mind, what am I? Am I a man? Am I a woman? Am I gay? Am I straight? Am I Republican? Am I a Democrat? Am I this? Am I that? What really is these identities that we've taken on that we hold on to so hard that we lose sight that are you really any of those things at all? So that's ultimately like why I wanted to bring this, because like I said, we do live in a world right now that is very polarizing when it comes to identities and ideologies and ancestral things and stuff like that. And I'm not advocating, no, if your ancestors have cultures, customs, and traditions, and you feel very passionate about keeping those custom cultures and traditions, um how your ancestors put them down, I'm all for that, honestly, because I feel that way about certain things within the African diaspora. But as a Gnostic, I do realize that it isn't the entire truth. And I think that that's what I personally feel. I think that as Gnostics, we should pay attention to that. It's true, but it isn't the entire truth.
It's our experience, and we shouldn't deny experience. It's what makes life have some meaning as well. But even with our political views, or for the sake of Christian apologetics that are debating, are we really going to be carrying that off into heaven? Are we going to be debating out there? No, certainly not. We're not going to be having our Bible verses and doing Bible battles.
Well,
That's also the material illusion. So, absolutely right again. And people just limit it to stuff. It's more than stuff. It goes deeper.
Right.
And that's what makes the path of spirituality harder, because there's a lot of detaching, but it's also a lot of embracing too, which doesn't get spoken of as well. So it's a duality. It's finding balance. And that's what makes Gnosticism stand out compared to, say, Buddhism, which is ultimate detachment. Here we find balance, which is pretty cool. So I like that. So you're not detaching for love just for the sake that it's a detachment of everything. It's good to experience love because that's our ultimate divine expression.